In the history of the British monarchy, access to the royal vault is never a given. It is earned. When Catherine Middleton walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey in April 2011, she wasn't just marrying a prince, she was entering a decades-long audition. For the first few years of her royal life, the late Queen Elizabeth II curated Catherine's jewellery with surgical precision. She didn't hand over the heavy dynastic monsters immediately. Instead, she offered pieces that were delicate, safe, and yet, if you knew where to look, loaded with profound historical meaning. This was the initiation, a period of testing the waters. The starter tiara. The first test was, of course, the wedding tiara. The world expected something grand, perhaps the lover's knot, or a new commission. Instead, Catherine appeared in the Cartier Halo tiara. It is a relatively modest piece by royal standards, a band of 16 graduated scrolls set with 739 brilliant diamonds. It is light, it is airy, it doesn't scream power. But the genius of this choice lies in its history. The Duke of York, the future King George VI, bought it for his wife in 1936, just weeks before he unexpectedly became king. Later, it was given to Princess Elizabeth for her 18th birthday. Here is the key detail. The young Princess Elizabeth never wore it publicly. It was a starter tiara that she quickly outgrew. She lent it to her sister, Princess Margaret, and later to her daughter, Princess Anne. By giving it to Catherine, the Queen was offering a piece that was undeniably royal, but free from the heavy political baggage of the state diadems. It was the perfect something borrowed for a commoner entering the firm. Elegant, respectful, but not presumptuous. Catherine paired it with diamond acorn earrings, a symbol from her own family crest. It was a masterclass in diplomacy, honoring the crown while retaining her own identity. The pearls of the matriarch. But if the tiara was a safe choice, the next loan was a signal of deep personal affection. In the early years of her marriage, Catherine began wearing a pair of pearl drop earrings that looked familiar to royal historians. These were the Bahrain pearl drop earrings. Their story is intimate. In 1947, for her wedding to Prince Philip, Princess Elizabeth received a shell containing 7 magnificent pearls from the Hakim of Bahrain. 2 of these were selected to create drop earrings. The young queen wore them constantly in the 1950s. If you look at the iconic Dorothy Wilding portraits, the images used on stamps and banknotes for decades, Elizabeth is wearing these exact earrings. They were the uniform of a young woman stepping into a role of immense destiny. When the Queen passed them to Catherine, the message was clear. We were seeing the same pearls that framed the face of the young sovereign, now framing the face of the future Queen. It was a visual echo across generations, a quiet passing of the torch that said, "I see my younger self in you." The return of the lotus. And finally, the first sign that the vault was truly opening. In December 2013, Catherine arrived at the diplomatic reception wearing a tiara that had been considered lost for decades. This was the lotus flower tiara. It is a beautiful 1920s piece featuring Egyptian papyrus motifs. It was originally a necklace given to the Queen Mother, who promptly dismantled it to create a tiara she could wear low on her forehead, flapper style. It passed to Princess Margaret, who made it her signature. But after Margaret's death, it vanished. Many assumed it had been sold or absorbed into the Snowdon family collection. When Catherine brought it back, it was a sensation. It proved that the Queen was willing to trust her with pieces that had complex, emotional histories. It wasn't just a starter piece anymore. It was a jewel with a personality. These 3 pieces, the halo, the Bahrain pearls, and the lotus flower, formed the foundation of Catherine's royal identity. They were the safe choices, But the audition was about to get much harder. The Queen was preparing to grant access to a different kind of treasure. Not the jewels of state, but the jewels of the heart. The pieces that belonged not to the crown, but to the marriage of Elizabeth and Philip. Next, we enter the inner circle. There is a difference between a loan and a legacy. A loan is something you give to a relative to wear for a night. A legacy is something you give to a daughter to keep forever. As Catherine's role within the family solidified, the Queen began to open a very specific, very private drawer in her jewellery box. These weren't the biggest diamonds. They weren't the most expensive. But they were the ones that Elizabeth held closest to her heart. They were the jewels of her marriage. By entrusting them to Catherine, the Queen wasn't just dressing a duchess. She was welcoming a granddaughter. The Duke's design. The most significant symbol of this trust is a bracelet that is rarely discussed, but profoundly important. The Edinburgh wedding bracelet. The value of this piece is not just in its stones, but in its architect. It was designed by Prince Philip himself. When Philip proposed to Elizabeth in 1946, he was a prince of Greece and Denmark, but he was not rich. His mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg, gave him a tiara she had received from the last Tsar and Tsarina of Russia. It was a relic of a lost empire. Philip dismantled it. He used the diamonds to create the engagement ring, but he had stones left over. So he designed a bracelet as a wedding gift for his bride. He worked with the London jeweller Philip Antrobus to create something bold, geometric, and distinctly Art Deco. It features 3 large, brilliant-cut diamonds set in platinum, linked by vertical sections. It is strong. It is substantial. It reflects the Duke's modernist taste. For 73 years, this bracelet was a staple of the Queen's wardrobe. She wore it for her 25th wedding anniversary portrait. She wore it for her Diamond Jubilee. It was hers. So, when Catherine appeared at a state banquet for the President of China in 2015, wearing this bracelet, the message was unmistakable. She wore it again to the BAFTAs in 2017. To trust the wife of your grandson with a gift designed by your husband, made from the diamonds of the Romanovs? That is a gesture of supreme approval. It signaled that Catherine was now the custodian of the family's most intimate memories. The necklace of mourning. But if the bracelet was a symbol of love, the next piece became a symbol of duty and loss. This is the Japanese pearl choker. In 1975, the Queen made her first state visit to Japan. The government presented her with a set of the finest cultured pearls. The Queen commissioned Garrard to string them into a 4-row choker with a curved diamond clasp. It is a classic piece. The Queen wore it often in the 80s. She even loaned it to Diana in 1982 for a banquet at Hampton Court. But in the hands of Catherine, this choker has taken on a new, solemn identity. She wore it for the Queen and Prince Philip's 70th wedding anniversary dinner in 2017, a celebration of longevity. But then came April 2021, the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh. Amidst the grief and the pandemic restrictions, Catherine arrived at St. George's Chapel wearing a black mask and the Japanese pearl choker. It was a visual anchor. It connected her to the Queen's own history of state visits and service. And then, in September 2022, for the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II herself, Catherine wore it again. It has become her armour for the most difficult days. By wearing the Queen's pearls to say goodbye to the Queen, Catherine was fulfilling the ultimate role of a royal woman, to be a figure of continuity when the world is falling apart. The Art Deco secret. Finally, there is a quieter treasure that speaks to the Queen's appreciation of style. Queen Mary's diamond choker bracelet. This is a piece of pure 1920s glamour. Originally, it was a choker worn by Queen Mary, part of her famous stack of diamond collars. But over time, it was converted into a flexible bracelet. It vanished for decades until the Queen Mother wore it for her 75th birthday portraits in 1975. Since 2015, it has become a staple of Catherine's evening wear. It is sleek, geometric, and incredibly chic. It is a direct link to Queen Mary, the matriarch who defined the royal look, now resting on the wrist of the woman who will define it for the 21st century. These loans proved that Catherine had passed the test of intimacy. She could handle the personal history of the Windsors. But now, she faced a different kind of challenge. A challenge that had nothing to do with the Queen, and everything to do with the ghost that haunts the House of Windsor. She had to wear the jewels of Diana, and she had to survive the comparison. Next, we look at taming the ghosts. There is a unique danger in wearing the jewellery of Diana, Princess of Wales. For any other royal woman, a diamond is just a diamond. But for the Princess of Wales, a sapphire isn't just a stone. It is a memory. It is a headline. It is a tragedy. When Catherine married Prince William, she inherited access to some of the most iconic jewels in modern history. But with them came a crushing weight of expectation. If she wore them too often, she would be accused of copying Diana. If she refused to wear them, she would be accused of erasing her. Catherine's genius has been to walk this tightrope. She has taken the pieces that symbolized Diana's pain and turned them into symbols of her own strength. She hasn't just worn them, she has tamed them. The heavy crown. The most visible symbol of this transition is the lover's knot tiara. This was Diana's signature, the 19 swinging pearls, the Gothic diamond arches. It is the tiara of a fairy tale princess, but the reality of wearing it was far from a fairy tale. Diana famously hated it. She complained that it was too heavy, that it gave her splitting headaches, and that the sound of the pearls swinging against the frame was distracting. For Diana, the tiara was a golden cage, beautiful but painful. Since 2015, it has become Catherine's primary state tiara, and the difference is striking. Catherine wears it with an air of complete ease. She doesn't look like she is in pain. She doesn't look overwhelmed. What was a burden for Diana has become a workhorse for Catherine. She has reclaimed it. She has turned a symbol of romantic melancholy into a symbol of professional steadiness. When we see the lover's knot now, we don't just think of the tragedy of the 90s, we think of the future queen. The rebel's choker. But if the tiara was a challenge of endurance, the Art Deco emerald choker was a challenge of style. This necklace has a wild history. The emeralds were a gift to Queen Mary from the ladies of India. But in 1985, during a tour of Australia, Diana took this stiff royal collar and snapped it across her forehead as a bandeau. It was a moment of punk rock rebellion. It was Diana saying, "I will not be contained by your rules." For decades after her death, the choker was untouchable. To wear it was to invite comparison to that iconic rebellious image. In December 2022, for the Earthshot Prize in Boston, Catherine brought it back. But she didn't wear it on her forehead. She wore it as Queen Mary intended, as a choker. Some called it safe. I call it respectful. By returning the jewel to its original form, Catherine acknowledged its history without trying to mimic Diana's rebellion. She signalled that while she honours her mother-in-law, she is not here to burn down the house. She is here to renovate it. The sapphire continuity. And then, there are the pieces that weave Diana into everyday life. We all know the engagement ring. But look at the earrings Catherine pairs with it. These are the double sapphire and diamond cluster earrings. They belonged to Diana. She wore them constantly. Catherine has modified them slightly, removing the top diamond to make them a simple drop, and wears them for everything from trooping the colour to state visits. They are no longer Diana's earrings. They are just Catherine's. They have become part of her uniform. This is the ultimate victory. By wearing these pieces consistently, quietly, and confidently, Catherine has drained them of their tragedy. She has proved that the best way to honour a ghost is not to leave her room locked, but to open the windows and let the light back in. But having mastered the past, Catherine was finally ready for the ultimate reward. The Queen had tested her with modesty. She had tested her with family secrets. She had watched her navigate the minefield of Diana's legacy. Now, it was time for the final level. It was time for the jewels that say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is the next Queen. Next, we unleash the heavy artillery. There comes a moment in the life of a senior royal when pretty is no longer enough. To represent the monarchy on the world stage, you need more than elegance. You need awe. You need power. Around 2017, the Queen decided that Catherine was ready. The initiation was over. The tests were passed. It was time to unlock the heavy artillery. These are the jewels that don't just sparkle, they thunder. They carry the weight of empire, the history of conquests, and the immense financial value of the crown. By lending these specific pieces, the Queen was sending a message to the world. Look at her. She is my equal. The ultimate diamond. The first shot was fired with a necklace of staggering value, the Nizam of Hyderabad. This is, quite simply, the most expensive necklace a royal woman can wear. Its story begins in 1947. The Nizam of Hyderabad was one of the richest men in the world. For Princess Elizabeth's wedding, he didn't just buy a gift. He instructed Cartier in London to let the princess choose whatever she wanted from their stock. She chose this. A masterpiece of 1930s design, a pavé-set center with a detachable double-drop pendant, featuring 13 massive emerald-cut diamonds. It is a necklace fit for a coronation. For decades, it was the Queen's power piece. She wore it for her official portraits. It was the image of monarchy. When Catherine walked into the National Portrait Gallery Gala in 2014 wearing the Nizam, the room went silent. It was a shock. This wasn't a loner for a junior royal. This was the Queen's own armour. By entrusting Catherine with a piece of such immense value, both financial and historical, the Queen was placing her at the very centre of the dynasty. The Victorian legacy. But if the Nizam was about value, the next piece was about lineage. In October 2018, for a state banquet honouring the King and Queen of the Netherlands, Catherine wore Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace. This takes us deep into history. The necklace was a gift from the future King Edward VII to his bride in 1863. 1863! This necklace witnessed the height of the Victorian Empire. It features large pearls surrounded by diamond clusters connected by festoons. It is heavy. It is imposing. It is designed to be seen from the back of an opera box. The Queen Mother adored it. It was her signature. But after she died in 2002, it vanished. For 16 years, it lay in the dark. When Catherine brought it back, it was a revelation. She was wearing the wedding necklace of the first Princess of Wales of the modern era. It was a subtle, intelligent nod to her future title. It connected her not just to the Queen, but to the entire line of women who have stood beside the throne. The Ruby Statement. And then, There is the Greville ruby necklace. This is a jewel with a formidable personality. Created by Boucheron in 1907, it is a deep V of diamonds with rubies woven through a complex floral design. It belonged to Mrs. Greville, the society hostess who left her hoard to the Queen Mother. It was one of Queen Elizabeth's personal favourites. She wore it constantly. In July 2017, at the Spanish state banquet, Catherine wore it. And she wore it bravely. She chose a gown with a deep neckline that allowed the necklace to sit wide on her collarbones, displaying its complex architecture. It was a visual confirmation that she had graduated. She was no longer wearing the delicate floral pieces of a debutante. She was wearing the heavy, complex, blood-red stones of a queen in waiting. The badge of office. Finally, there is the piece that serves as a literal badge of rank, the Prince of Wales' feathers brooch. This is an heraldic jewel. It features the 3 ostrich feathers of the heir to the throne, encircled by diamonds and emeralds. It was a wedding gift to Princess Alexandra in 1863. Diana wore it as a pendant. Camilla wore it as a brooch. When Catherine became the Princess of Wales in September 2022, she wasted no time. For the first state visit of the new reign, welcoming the President of South Africa, she pinned this brooch to her chest. It wasn't a fashion choice. It was a statement of identity. I am the Princess of Wales. By wearing these pieces, Catherine proved that she has the shoulders to carry the heavy history of the Windsors. But the story doesn't end here. With the death of the Queen and the accession of King Charles, the vaults have opened even wider. And in the last few years, we have seen miracles happen. Treasures that were thought lost for a century have suddenly reappeared. Next, we look at the new era and the 100-year-old secret that Catherine brought back to life. When a reign ends, the locks on the vault are changed. With the accession of King Charles III, many wondered, would the new era mean a scaling back? Would the grand tiaras be retired in favour of a slimmer, more modern monarchy? The answer, delivered by the Princess of Wales, was a resounding no. In fact, under the new King and Queen Camilla, the archives have opened wider for Catherine than anyone dared to dream. We are no longer just seeing loans, we are seeing resurrections. We are seeing the return of jewels that were thought to be lost to history. This is the final chapter of the audition. Catherine is no longer just passing the test, she is rewriting the rules. The Sleeping Beauty. The biggest shock of the new reign came in November 2023. The occasion was the Korean state banquet. The doors of the ballroom opened, and there was Catherine. But she wasn't wearing the lover's knot. She wasn't wearing the lotus flower. She was wearing the Strathmore Rose tiara. For jewel historians, this was a stop the press moment. This tiara had been a ghost for exactly 100 years. It was a wedding gift to the Queen Mother in 1923 from her father, the Earl of Strathmore. It is a delicate floral garland of diamonds. The young Duchess of York wore it in the 1920s, low across her forehead. But after the 1930s, it vanished. For a century, it sat in the dark. Many assumed it was broken or too fragile to be worn again. But Catherine brought it back. And she wore it perfectly, not as a flapper bandeau, but positioned high in her hair like a crown of living flowers. By entrusting her with this specific piece, the only tiara that belonged solely to the Queen Mother's own family, the king was giving his daughter-in-law a profound gift. He was allowing her to bring a lost piece of family history back into the light. It proved that the new monarchy respects its deepest roots. The coronation link. If the Strathmore Rose was a surprise, The George VI festoon necklace was a confirmation of status. In the first official portrait of the new reign, released in May 2023, King Charles and Queen Camilla stand at the center. But look at Catherine. Around her neck is the massive 3-row diamond festoon necklace commissioned by King George VI in 1950. He made it for his daughter Elizabeth, using loose diamonds from the vault. It was Queen Elizabeth's favorite. She wore it constantly. It was her uniform for state openings of Parliament. For Catherine to wear this necklace in the official portrait of the new king, it is a visual link that cannot be broken. It connects the king's father, George VI, the king's mother, Elizabeth II, and the king's heir, William and Catherine, in a single chain of diamonds. It is the definition of dynasty. The ruby finale. And finally, the moment that felt like a coronation in itself. December 3rd, 2025. The state banquet for the President of Germany. Catherine stepped out wearing the Oriental circlet. This is the big one. Designed by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria, remodeled by Queen Alexandra, beloved by the Queen Mother. It is a crown of arches and lotus flowers set with rubies. It is strictly reserved for queens and queen consorts. Queen Elizabeth II wore it only once. For Catherine to wear it as the Princess of Wales is unprecedented. It is a gesture of immense generosity from Queen Camilla, who, as the current queen, has the primary right to it. Seeing the Oriental circlet on Catherine was a revelation. She paired it with a sleek blue gown, letting the rubies burn with a quiet fire. She looked regal. She looked ready. It was the final stamp of approval. The audition is over. Catherine has worn the starter tiaras, the personal tokens, the tragic heirlooms, and now the crowns of queens. The verdict. 10 years ago, a young bride walked into the abbey wearing a modest halo. Today, a future queen walks the halls of Buckingham Palace wearing the history of the empire. She has earned every carat. She navigated the minefield of Diana's legacy with grace. She honored the Queen's memory with dignity. And she has proven that she can carry the weight of the past without being crushed by it. The royal vault is no longer a test for Catherine. It is her wardrobe. And as we look to the future, one thing is certain: the jewels are in safe hands.